On this episode, we sit down with our buddy Flo to hear about his experience building his own house in Thailand.
So if you've ever thought of settling down in Thailand in a house of your own design, you'll dig this episode of the Bangkok podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 to introduce the Canuck word hoser into the Thai language and is still waiting for approval from the Royal Society, which safeguards the Thai language.
Well, I vote yes.
Take off.
And I am Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract almost 20 years ago, fell in love with saying, yes, I like spicy food, but not Thai spicy, and never left. I've said that thousands of times. in my life.
Yeah, you have something in common with this week's patron. We'll get into that later.
Okay. We want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, Robert Chenier, who supports us at the show Shoutout level. Stick around after we're done talking to a friend of ours who built a house in northern Thailand to hear why we're going to be setting up a gross food contest between Robert and the guest on our previous show, Dan Fraser, to see who will take home the 2020 Gross Food King Award. But before we start, a huge thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons like Robert also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about the long-delayed fate of the mummy of child murderer and cannibal, Si Ui, which has been on display for the past 60 years here in Bangkok. Our thoughts on the ongoing student-led protests, and finally, some good news about Thailand's COVID battle. To become a patron and gain access to all that cool stuff, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
All right, before we get started, I want to say a quick hello to Dr. Pia On at Tantakit Dental. Our mutual friend said to say hello, so hello. Thanks for listening. All right, well, on this episode, we are going to cover a topic that we've been wanting to do for a really long time, like since season 1, and that is discussing the process of building a house in Thailand. Now, a quick Google search will reveal that there are a ton of blogs and websites and videos out there that cover this. Some of them are quite good, but they can't compare to our buddy Flo, because he's our buddy. Flo is a German expat who has lived in Thailand for a number of years and just recently completed building a house in Mae Hong Son province in northwestern Thailand. Now, Flo was nice enough to have us over to his apartment to discuss his house building adventure, everything from finding the plot of land to designing the thing with an architect, to figuring out what's going to happen with the sewage, to the ins and outs of communicating with a work crew who were over 1,000 kilometers away. So here is our interview with our buddy Flo about his brand new house. All right, Florian, well, good to see you again, man. It's been a long time since we hung out. Welcome to the Bangkok podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been forever since I saw you, so I'm very happy to see you.
Yeah.
And even more happy to be on the show.
Yeah, well, it's nice. Actually, we are sitting down here at your living room table, and I'm joined here by Ed. Ed, say hello.
Hello, everybody.
We're in person now that the corona thing has died down a little bit. We can get out and be relatively secure in the fact that we're probably not going to catch anything terribly awful. So it's nice to do something again in person, and great to see you here in your apartment. Trivia note for listeners: the apartment that we're sitting in, Flo's apartment, is very nice, and it's actually my old apartment. I used to live here years ago, and we're going to post some pictures and video for patrons for this. So I have fond memories of this place in Chinatown.
Greg, did you actually hook him up with this place, or how did it come about?
I think so, right? Yeah, you moved in after I moved out, right?
Yeah, I remember, I think I was looking for a place, and I also asked through Twitter if anybody just knows about a nice place somewhere. I think at the same time you were moving out or just about to move out, and yeah, you said, hey, if you want to have a look, I have this place here and here. And we came by, and it was quite difficult to find, I remember.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, that's how you basically hooked me up with it.
Yeah, I remember that was very serendipitous because it was like I was leaving in a month, and then you said, hey, anyone have a place? And I said, yes, I do. So here we are.
Cool.
Nice to see this place anyway. Good, you're taking care of it. But speaking of houses, we are very happy to have Florian here because we, for the longest time, have wanted to get someone on to talk about building a house in Thailand. And we've gotten a lot of questions over the years from listeners who have asked us to do a show on this because there's always a lot of questions about this. There's a lot of forums on Thai Visa and other places about people sharing their experiences. And I don't really know anyone who's ever built a house here. And then we were talking a while ago and you said that you did. So here we are. So it's great, man. You've showed me pictures of it. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful house. It's in northern Thailand. Can you just kind of walk us through the process and how did you arrive at the decision to say like, all right, time to build?
Yeah. So I've been in Thailand now for around 11 or 12 years, I think. And after the first 4 or 5 years, I've been always going up to Mae Hong Son, which is to do motorcycle rides, because it's an amazing route to do motorcycle routes. It's very famous. It's called the Mae Hong Son Loop. Mm-hmm. So you can take your motorbike and do this thing in 2 or 3 days or a week. And it's fantastic because it's beautiful roads and it's just jungle around you. So
gorgeous area.
So if you imagine, some Thai jungle, just imagine Mae Hong Son is just 95% jungle. Then after a couple of years, I was just taking my girlfriend up there to just go around, and we went to this little super nice village which has a little mountain lake and swans and pine trees, and I just loved it. And I was just like, it would be really cool to just have like a little place here to, instead of going to a hotel, we just have a little place here. Do you think it's expensive to buy land? So that basically was the beginning of it. And we were looking around for around 1.5 years. It was not the easiest process to actually find land because depending on where you are, like Mae Hong Son, for example, is 95% national park. Which you can't build on, obviously. And then there's like 2 or 3% agricultural land, so you can't buy that either. Or you have to do agricultural things.
Right.
But I'm not a rice farmer, so I didn't want that. So there's only like 2 or 3% of land that you can actually buy that has an official deed. And I think we talked about this quickly before. So in Thailand, you have different papers for different land ownerships. So the official deed is called chanot. And a chanot means you have a paper that just certifies it's 100% your land. Quick note here, as a foreigner, you can't own land, so it's my girlfriend's land.
Right, yeah.
So basically this paper is the official way. But then there's many other papers, including one that's called Noso Sam, which is basically the sort of gray area of owning things. It's more or less a temporary ownership. So you find a lot of land often that's very cheap. I'm talking $2,000-$3,000 cheap, like a plot of land for like really cheap.
Wow.
Right.
And you get this paper and you think, oh, wow, this is amazing. That's a great deal. But what it actually means is that they put your name on this paper, but it only means that you're sort of taking care of the land. So
it's not a true title.
It's not a true title. So basically, your name is on this land somehow, but it doesn't really belong to you. If the military would come, the government, anybody would come, they could say, oh, you're not taking care of this land. I want to do it. They can take over.
Right.
It's quite a weird process.
It's sort of like beginners land ownership or squatters' rights, sort of like.
Sort of, yeah.
But you were saying that if you take care of the land and no one appropriates it from you, then after a while, that Nosal Sam
correct will turn into a chanot.
Turns into a chanot, like a real deed, so it becomes your land.
Now, is that the process that you had to follow?
No. So my land already had the chanot, which I really wanted to make sure I'm not in this gray area where I build something nice maybe and then somebody takes it away from me.
Right.
So it was quite difficult to find that land. And the way we did it, we just printed out little sort of leaflets saying we're looking for a very tiny plot of land somewhere not too urban, somewhere in the jungle, if possible flat, because it's a lot of money to flatten the land. You would be very surprised.
Oh, really? Right.
It can be millions of baht to flatten the land.
Oh, wow.
And that's important, right? You need it flat, otherwise it's very difficult to build. So we were looking, we're just handing out these little leaflets saying, we're looking for a little plot of land, flat land, somewhere in the jungle. Here's a phone number. And we gave this to these little mom and pop stores that sell the eggs and the
Fascinating. So you mean you just kind of walked around the town or the area and just handed out the
Yes.
leaflets. So that's a great idea.
Because I think that's also the easiest way. I mean, we also put a budget, for example, on the leaflet so that people already knew, okay, the person who is looking for land is not looking for 20 rai, which this is the Thai unit, which is a massive amount of land,
Right.
which you can't deal with, and it's too expensive. So they know exactly, okay, they're looking for a little plot with this title, with this Chanot title, and they want to be somewhere in the jungle. So people already had an idea, I think. So we got a lot of leads through that. We also looked a lot online, but Mae Hong Son is not a very famous province because it's very remote.
Yeah.
There are direct flights from Bangkok, I think 3-4 times a week, which are very, very great for us because our house is just 15 minutes from the airport.
Awesome.
It's still very remote. But it's easy to reach.
So is the land actually in the jungle? But there's obviously must be road access.
There's a dirt road. Yes.
A dirt road. That's the only way to get to your place.
Yes.
Is a dirt road.
So I think overall, when I summarize my house, I always tell people it's an off-grid house because we don't have any electricity lines, plumbing lines, or anything.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So we're completely independent. We have solar cells and a water well. And it works all well. We have air conditioning and everything, so it's not a problem. It's just how you construct it. And
you know, you say you didn't want to be a farmer, but you're kind of close. You're out there pumping water for your breakfast.
So 100% of the power is solar.
100%. Yes, there's no other power source. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome.
And it works really well, I must say. I mean, it's a whole nother topic, the whole solar system thing. I explained to many people how it all works, how you can do it. It wasn't expensive, and it's great.
Cool. So you found the land, you went up to look at it, it seemed all right, you bought it. There was no problems buying the land, I assume.
No, we were very lucky with the land. So again, it took about 1.5 years to find it because we were like getting a lot of leads, but a lot of stuff was really expensive, or it didn't have the title, or it was just not nice enough.
Right.
And then we found this really nice place that's 15 minutes out of town, really in the middle of jungle. There's only rice fields around and jungle. It's around 2 kilometers from the Burmese border, so it's very jungly. Side note, a lot of wildlife. With an elephant in the garden, wild elephant.
Oh, really?
That's cool. That's selling point, though.
Yeah, we have cobras. We have
That's not so much.
all sorts of stuff.
Now, was the land cleared, or did you have to clear it yourself?
So that was the good point. It was owned by a person from Bangkok, and he built something there before, sort of like a little wooden shed. And so there were like some poles, and he said, okay, you will get a bit of a discount if you remove all of that. So we had to remove a little bit, but overall the land was very flat, and it wasn't too jungly, so it was easy to clear it out.
And how actually big is the plot?
The plot is 1.5 rai, which I have to calculate. I think, I'm not so sure, it's like 300 square meters or something like that. I'm not so sure.
So it's not tiny, but it's not huge.
It's not huge, but you could easily build a second house on it. It's a big garden, but it's not a massive plot. Yeah.
Right.
I'm just looking at the old internet here. 1.5 rai is 0.593 acres. So 0.6 of an acre, a bit more than half an acre.
Okay. Because an acre is big. That's just mine.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah, that's my estimate.
I mean, I'm German, so I'm thinking in meters, and I just bought like this water tube that was 100 meters, and that was one side. And it's roughly a square, so I'm thinking sort of 100, 100, 100, 100. But that should then be... Oh, no, it actually does, no, it does make sense.
Yeah, you forgot a zero, I think.
Yes, I forgot a zero.
But Ed's American, so he's thinking in
I'm thinking feet an acre.
foot horsepowers per quantum or whatever.
That's right.
Now we just need the Thai speaker talking about the the rai and the
wa, the square wa.
Square wa.
Oh, geez.
It's very complicated, but yeah.
So let me tell you a story. When I was in high school, I had kind of a bit of an architecture interest, and I designed my perfect house. I got my paper one evening, and I laid it out on my desk, and I drew the plans for my perfect house. And when I was done, I realized I'd forgotten to draw bedrooms and bathrooms because I had a bowling alley and a video arcade and all this stuff. So how do you approach designing your house?
Mm-hmm. So we had the plot of land, and then it came to designing the house. And at first I wanted to have it really small, which is now really embarrassing to see because now it's quite a huge house. But you just plan it out, and I had like a lot of ideas of doing a container house. So I looked into container houses, but then I visited a lot of container houses in Thailand, and it was my idea slowly turned into something else because I was thinking this is not feasible.
Really?
So first of all, the containers here were much more expensive than in Europe. In Europe, you could easily build a container house for a couple $1,000.
Oh, wow.
And here it's really expensive. Then I heard a lot of people have problems with getting used containers that have a lot of chemicals on it. So cleaning the chemicals cost more than buying a new container. That sort of thing. But then the main issue was that the metal of the container just heats up in Thai heat. And you can't,
right.
even if you have an air conditioner in it, you would need like 24-hour air condition, and it's not worth it.
I see.
So I sort of looked at the container houses, and I sort of put different designs from the container houses together to sort of have an idea of what I want. And then at some point, obviously, I'm not an engineer or anything, so I looked for an architect, which was quite difficult as well.
Right.
So that was the next challenge. Because overall, I should also maybe mention here that the whole house and the land and everything was built without taking a loan. So I always paid off bit by bit. That's
Right.
why the whole process also took longer. Like I took breaks in between where I told the workers, guys, sorry, I don't have money. I just have to work. And then
Yeah. Right.
So
That's amazing.
so it took some longer time. But anyway, talking about just different budgets, I met a lot of really cool architects through friends that were Thais here, but also foreigners. And it was quite mind-blowing how much they charge.
Really?
I mean, I guess it's just a normal price, but it was just going into the millions of baht only for the blueprints. And I'm just like, wow, no, that's what I wanted to spend on the house.
Right.
So at the end, I found a Thai architect that is really nice, and he gave me a really good price. He was just sort of only calculating 100 square meters of design, and he designed very simple. But also mainly he took just all the ideas I had to put it together. So he didn't design that much himself. He sure did a lot of important stuff, but...
Now, it wasn't possible to use some kind of pre-designed home or anything, or it really had to be custom laid out?
No, I looked at a lot of like sort of prefab houses that are sort of ready to go, or blueprints you can buy and that just like you can
Right.
easily do it. But to be honest, most of it I didn't really like.
Okay.
And then there were a little bit about the house now, because it's 3 stories and it sort of looks a little bit like a container house. It's like 3 containers on top of each other, sort of. It's like a Jenga sort of tower.
Right.
And everything in the middle is open. So you can look up and there's a skylight. The main reason for that is because there is so little light pollution in Mae Hong Son. It's amazing to see the stars.
Oh,
And
cool.
Oh,
I
that's
love
great.
stars. I love astrology. Not astrology.
Oh, how dare you.
Astronomy. Hate astrology. Just make a note. It's absolutely, it's mesmerizing at night. I mean, I could watch 4 hours just
That's great.
laying there.
So when I think of someone building a house out in the countryside, what pops into my head is more of a traditional Thai house, and some of them can be very nice, made out of teak, but you decided not to go that route.
So again, I looked at different blueprints, I looked at different designs, and especially in a hot region like Thailand, I wanted to build sort of eco-friendly. I don't want to have the AC on all the time. So we wanted to build a house that has natural air ventilation. I wanted to build a house that has double walls where the heat is not coming in, but like sort of going out very quickly.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a lot of ways to build an eco-friendly house, and to build in Thailand, there's different ways to do it. And a teak house is one way to do it. It's actually very eco-friendly and the air goes up, but it's not my style. I wanted to have a modern house, but since it's off-grid and it needs solar cells, so there's a lot of things you have to think about.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that combine. It was quite special to build it. So we decided to go with an architect and just do our blueprints. Also, the area is very earthquake prone. Like you have an earthquake like every 3 or 4 months.
Right.
It's not a strong earthquake, maybe 3 to 4 magnitude, but it's very close to us. So
you had to take that into account when
Yes.
you built the house.
yes, so there needs to be extra steel and things like that. Mae Hong Son only has maybe a handful of houses that reach more than 2 floors. It's everybody builds very low because of earthquakes.
Now, is there also a flooding concern?
In our area, not, but in some
Are
areas.
you on relative high ground, or?
We are on a flat but higher ground near a mountain, but also we have a river right at our land, so that there is a flooding risk. It is controlled by a dam, so we didn't have any flooding yet, but you never know.
Right.
If there's torrential rains or something. So it was difficult to build all of this because there's a lot of special needs. Again, earthquakes, 3 levels, different
solar power, right?
Yes, solar power. So a lot of things that come together, and heat, and So
one of the things that always seems to be at the fore of any issues with people building houses is that the general thinking is that you can't let the construction crews do the work by themselves for too long. Like, you've always got to be checking up on them. You've always got to be going back, and
that is a cliche.
Usually a Thai speaker, because they can explain the nuance of construction, which I have no idea.
Let me quickly interject. I have one friend who built a house in Rangsit, and basically he really had to supervise. I mean, I don't necessarily think he was there every day, but he really had to keep an eye on the laborers to make sure the work was up to his spec. I mean, but they're out in Mae Hong Son. You're working out of Bangkok. How did you supervise?
Very difficult. It's something we planned ahead. So we had some friends in Mae Hong Son that were doing the supervising. So we were paying them some money monthly to be there, but I must say, it was not enough. We had somebody over once a day to check and take some pictures for us and keep us updated and everything. But there's still a lot of mistakes that were made. It's all stuff by now, it's okay. I can get over it. But every time I'm in the house, I see these little mistakes here and there. One thing, I think I told you the story before, is like most of the workers were Thai Burmese, and they haven't built a modern house in this area. So they built a lot of houses in Mae Hong Son, but not modern ones.
So they didn't have experience with this type of construction?
Yes, at all. They had no idea. And even though they could read the blueprints and everything, there's still a lot of things that go wrong. So, for example, our house is very open floor. Everything is open. And we only have two doors, the entry door and the bathroom door. And they messed up the doors by just having the handles. You could only open the door by pushing the handle up. And they thought it was a normal way of opening a Western door.
Because it's a kind of door handle where you put your hand around it and press down.
You press down.
And then open the door
Everybody
inward.
does that. I don't know a single... I don't even know it in Thailand. I mean, you have the knob, but you also have handles that go down. They must have seen it.
My buddy has similar funny stories. Like one of his stories involves them, the workers, putting a toilet in a bathroom like almost immediately against the wall.
Oh, really?
You know, so like on the right side. So you sit on the toilet and it's like your shoulder is touching the wall. And it's like, how could you get that wrong?
Yeah, we had very similar things, and I mean, also very major flaws where it's just like the whole build took around 3 years, 2 years on the main construction, but like halfway through, at some point, I was just like pointing out, so where is the sanitation going? Where are all the pipes going? And they're like, oh, yes, pipes. So they had to crack open walls and make new tunnels. Yes, because they completely forgot about it.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Okay, so this is in a way. I mean, it sounds like in the end it's a success.
It's an absolute success,
but it does fit the cliche.
It just takes some work, right?
I mean, this is the cliche of everyone who wants to build in Thailand is that you really can't trust the builders, construction guys who do a professional job on their own. So at least this fits the stereotype.
Oh, you want drainage?
Oh,
you
want
pipes. That's going to
pipes.
be extra.
I thought you just go out to the bush, but
right. It's like the tuk-tuk driver, or the boat driver that takes you halfway to the river and then stops. Says, "Oh no, that was just to come out. You want to go back to the shore? Okay, well that's going to cost extra."
Well, let me ask you this. Let me take it one step further. Were you ever worried about theft or corruption or being cheated? I mean, did you feel like at least the guys you were working with were honest?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Overall, I must say it was a great experience, and I think it mainly has to do also with the local people there that are just super nice, and they're super welcoming, and we're very lucky. I think I didn't talk about this, so we searching about a contractor. So basically, I just want to quickly inject that here.
Please, yeah. How did you find it?
Because that was really difficult. The blueprint and the architect is one thing, but finding a contractor is actually quite difficult. So what we did, we just drove around in Mae Hong Son and we just looked for the most modern house we could find. And there were a couple that were sort of like modern style. And then we asked these people, knock, knock.
Oh, wow.
Excuse me.
Brilliant.
We love your house and we're building one. This is modern. It seems to all work out. Where can we get these workers? And then we were pretty lucky to find the contractor just in one of our neighboring villages. And he was also the Gangnam, which means the district chief, which means he is actually responsible for approving our house design, which was another big little story I have to quickly put in. our plot of land is in a little village, and this village, the village leader came to us when we started building, and he was like, "Oh, in this village, you can only build teak houses. You can't build this. This is not allowed."
Oh, wow.
And we're like, "Ooh, this is a problem. We have all the materials now here. We have the blueprint. We paid for the architect. We paid for the land. We cannot just build a teak house now in the typical Mae Hong Son style, which is like these three roofs on each other." And then our contractor, which is also the district chief, could overrule that, but he didn't want to. So he said, "There's going to be a vote in the village."
Really?
About our house.
Oh, my God.
And I was getting really shivery. I was telling my girlfriend, "Can you, get in there, get your ears out. What are people saying?" I'm so if this is not working out, then everything is
right.
It's a lot of money down the drain.
Absolutely, yeah. And then the village voted all for us.
Oh, that's great.
Which was great to hear. So all the people were very supportive.
That's great.
Well, that deserves a gift of that chicken broth that you see people giving each other in commercials.
Yes.
Wait, hold on, let me ask a question. So does your girlfriend have any connection with that part of the country? Is she from the north? Or
she's from Bangkok. No, not at all.
So she didn't know anyone up there?
No, she actually didn't like it that much. She was sort of in the beginning, she was like, "If you really want to build here, I mean, it's really far. It's yours."
So much stars.
It's too many stars. The air is so clean.
It's quiet.
She loves the nature, but she doesn't like the bites. She gets a lot of she has a lot of allergies against bugs, and it's very, there's a lot of wildlife, a lot of...
Oh, I guess that is another issue. So with that open design, do you have a problem with mosquitoes?
No, we have mosquito nets everywhere that are sort of you can close, and the wind is still circulating, so it works really well.
Oh, excellent.
No problem, really.
Cool.
Anyway, let me connect back to the contractor. So we found the contractor that built a modern house, and then he connected us with the workers, and a lot of these workers were also local from our village. So I think this was another reason why they're also quite happy to have us there. So they're getting work from us as well, and they also know that we're not there all of the year. So roughly we spend 3 to 4 months there, and the rest of the time sometimes we have friends there. We want to Airbnb it to some tourists, and so there's also people that get paid a little bit to take care of the land, like cut the grass, make sure nothing gets
so it's
damaged.
a source of income.
Yes, so they're very happy about that.
That's great. Well. Now, have you been successful with the Airbnb? Are there a lot of tourists up there? I mean, obviously not right now, but previously, have you had tourists stay in your place?
We only had friends over so far, because at the moment it's still a little bit difficult. There's some issues, for example, a thing we haven't thought about before with solar power. You can also do water heating, but since our pipes were pretty messed up, we had to have electric heaters, and they work. But at night, everything is from battery power.
Oh, so and it takes too much power.
Yeah, so it takes a lot of power, so you can only shower for 5 or 10 minutes, which for most people is fine. But if we Airbnb it, we're still a little bit worried that people maybe not understand this. They shower too long, then they sit in the dark and they complain. So we're working on that, but we're going there soon.
Okay, well, let me now ask the most important question. What about internet?
Faster than Bangkok.
Faster than Bangkok, for
real.
real.
Believe it. So I bought a 4G router with a SIM card, and since nobody there uses the 4G network, it's blazingly fast. It's faster.
All right, I'm a potential customer.
You're going to rename it. It's going to be called the Florian network.
Yeah,
seriously,
I'm a customer. We're going to have to talk. When this interview's over, we're going to have to talk.
I'm
a customer.
I have fiber here, and I have 100 Mbit up and down, and I get the same in Bangkok, in Mae Hong Son, in the house.
It's funny. Technically speaking now, I want to live in both his houses. I want to live here in your place. Up in Mae Hong Son.
This interview is actually a sting. We're going to
we're stealing your property, basically.
That's why you are asking what girlfriend or wife.
That's right. That's right.
So as we're wrapping up here, I don't want to keep you too long, but one of the things that I'm always concerned about when you move out into the sort of away from the city and into an area where foreigners are not that common, there's always sort of this issue of maybe being a bit of a target, because maybe people might perceive of you as being rich or having a lot more money or something. And if you're not there a lot of the time, I've read stories online and I've heard from friends and friends of friends that their place, when they leave it unattended for too long, is they come back and a lot of the time it's been broken into or things have been broken or something like that. Is that a concern?
A lot of people ask me that actually, but I'm not concerned at all. I mean, Mae Hong Son and especially our area, it's quite hard to find. It's not, you really need to have a motorbike or car to get there. It's quite a bit remote, and all the people that know about it are friends of ours or locals that we know. So I'm not really worried, but also another reason I think why I'm not worried is that there's not really anything valuable in the house.
Right.
We have a projector that's very nice, so you have like a little cinema. But other than that, they could steal the fridge maybe, but if they want to steal the solar cells or something, that's a lot of work. They have to go on the roof. And
plus, you said you do have locals kind of checking in on the place or taking care of it.
Mm-hmm. So that's another. I mean, I have some CCTV there too, so it's connected to the internet. I get an alert if anybody enters the land.
Oh, that's great. So you have a security system.
Yeah. So I see if somebody's there, and
sometime it's going to beep, and you're going to look at your phone. There's going to be an elephant standing in your living room.
That's what we had overnight. I was looking. Oh my god, what's happening? So yeah, there's a lot of wildlife too.
So last question then: if someone wants to build a house outside of Bangkok or do something that similar to what you did, what would you recommend? If you did it again, what would you do again? What would you not do?
I think there's a lot of sort of personal design ideas that could be much better for a house. So I think if you design a house yourself, I think there's a lot of ideas that can probably be much more practical in terms of design. But just in general, building in Thailand, I think it's always good to take your time with it and really not rush it. Really look for a contractor that is good. Really look for an architect that fits your budget and likes your ideas and your design.
And supervise the workers.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. You want to have drainage. Just find the right locals also that work on the house. I think it's really quite important, and it's not easy as a foreigner. I think you need support. I mean, I had my girlfriend, luckily, to organize a lot of things because my Thai is not good enough to use all these construction terms work in this environment. But it was a really rewarding experience, and I'm really happy overall with the house. It turned out really well, and I love spending my time there. It's fantastic. But yeah, it's a lot of work. It's you have to put in time and not much money. It was overall very cheap. I mean,
but in the long run, you consider it a success.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Great.
Right. Well, I think we should have our next podcast meet up there.
Absolutely.
It'll be us three.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to buy a ticket and take a bus and take a bit. Well, Florian, thanks so much for coming on, man. It was interesting.
Sure.
Interesting hearing about that experience. I hope I can do that one day as well. But I just really love Bangkok, and the Mae Hong Son podcast doesn't roll off the tongue in the same way that the Bangkok podcast does. But it's great, man. Again, we'll put up some pictures for patrons, and we'll have the picture of the house on the main graphic of the show so people can see what it looks like. It's a great place, and congratulations on getting it done.
So listeners, if you're interested in spending a few days or a week or two in the jungle in Mae Hong Son in a cool, modern, solar-powered house, you need to contact Florian. So I guess we'll include a link or something.
For Airbnb, yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes.
Great.
Cool. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. I look forward to heading up there myself one day and riding an elephant or something.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Cheers.
Hey guys, well, one of the things we do for our patrons is we send out questions before we interview someone, but because I'm so disorganized, I forgot to do that. But Flo has very thankfully agreed to join me here online after our interview was done, and I did ask some of our patrons for questions that they have of him, and that's what we're going to do now. So Flo, thanks for coming back on and meeting me, man. Sorry I forgot to do this the first time around.
Hey there.
So let's just work our way through these questions that our patrons sent in.
Sure.
We have a question here from Chris. He says, I've been interested in how the property taxes work. Do they have property tax? Does it go to the province or the village? How much is it? Does everyone have to pay? Does it depend on the type of land or ownership rights, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so there is definitely property tax, but the good news is that as far as I know, you only have to pay property tax if your building or your whole project exceeds 50 million baht, which is quite a big amount. So I think even if you build a pretty big house, you should be on the safe side. But I did hear that there's a new bill passing through the government house that they do want to have property tax on lower building sites too, so lower than 50 million. So maybe it's coming up in the future, but so far I've not paid anything, and as far as I know, I don't have to. So
well, as far as you know,
yes,
so you might want to look into that. All right, Joe says, Curious to know about building codes. Are they strict or pretty lax? Seems like a lot of residential property looks basically the same, so trying to figure out the similarity is due to being economical, or is it regulatory driven? What's the deal?
Yeah, that's a quite funny question. So in general, I would say they're pretty relaxed. Since we built our house with our contractor, who is also the district chief, he was responsible for signing off all of our building codes. So basically, usually how it works, you go to that building department in your province and you give them all the blueprints, a copy of the blueprints, and they will just check through the blueprints. And I think the most important part of all of this is that one or two independent engineers sign off on it, because I think the main thing they're looking for is just the overall stability of the house, I guess. So if all the steel is correct and all these things, they're pretty relaxed on all other matters. So just as an example, my mom visited our house for the first time in Mae Hong Son, and she was sort of outraged coming from Germany. She was like, wow, you have this, you have all this open space in the middle and you have a railing around it, but there's nothing that can hold you. So basically, if you're a kid, you could just walk through it and you would fall down. And this is something, for example, in Germany, nobody would ever sign that off. But in Thailand, nobody asks us really if we can do that or not. And I mean, later on, we made it a bit safer and put something on the railing. But yeah, I think it's pretty relaxed overall.
I think if you just bought about 40,000 bags of marshmallows and spread them out across your main floor, you'll be fine.
That's one option, of course. Yeah, we thought about that.
That's an interesting point, though. I mean, one of the good things about living in Thailand is that it's not so tightly regulated, and you can kind of get around things, and you have a bit more freedom to be creative with things like this. But it can be a bit of a double-edged sword, I guess, because you do want to make sure your house is safe, but you don't want to have to, this is 9 centimeters, it should only be 8 centimeters. Like, you have to find that middle ground between being overly strict and just, not safe.
Sure. I mean, I think overall, you also have to look at your own build. I mean, you want to make it safe, right? So if it comes to like fire exits or all these sort of like important things that come to the structure, I think it's better to be on the safe side and make sure it's correct, right? But I think if it comes to like design things where it's like maybe you have very big windows or you want to do something very unique, I think you definitely have more options in Thailand than anywhere else to do that.
Right. Interesting. All right. Well, Jeremy asked, what's the biggest or funniest misunderstanding that happened during the building process, and how did you catch it?
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. Actually, a lot of friends asked that before. There's a bunch of things that happened just from the start on. I mean, the workers are mainly Burmese workers, and they looked at the blueprints and they thought they understood it. But then when it came to pouring the first cement for the building structure, they were like, so where's the front of the house? And we were sort of freaking out a little bit. We're like, well, the front of the house is where the entrance door is, and it's like in this direction. And there was a moment where they actually wanted to build the house completely the other way, which is a big problem because everything in this house, especially the glass windows, are oriented to not get hot during daytime and all these things. So it would be quite a disaster if they would have built it the other way. And there have been lots of other things too. I think, I'm not so sure. I think I told you this before. We only have 2 doors in the whole house because everything is very open plan. Right. And these 2 doors have 2 handles, door handles. And they managed to put them into the door so that he can only open the door by pulling the handle up.
Right. We talked about that in the interview.
I don't know how they have ever opened a normal door. I don't know. But there was... Yeah, I think it's a lot of misunderstandings come in when you have like sort of Western architecture built by Thai or Burmese workers. I think that's the biggest thing that comes in.
Right. The architect is like, oh, you wanted 4 walls. Oh, I see. This is going to change things. Sure. Kevin actually has 2 questions, but his first question is, did you do anything to make it livable during the burning season?
Oh, that's actually a very big concern. And to be honest, I would, if anybody thinks about building up north, especially Chiang Mai area, Mae Hong Son area, Chiang Rai area, this is really a thing you should think about. I mean, I don't have asthma or any big issues, but basically every March to April, we're not going up to Mae Hong Son at all, because the burning season is really, really tough. It's really a thick fog, and it has been worsening over the past years. I was there a couple times for just a few days, and we have some air purifiers, of course, but I think I just don't want to sit inside the house if I'm all in nature. So it's really not an enjoyable time. And I must say, it's sort of sad that we can't use the house in March or April, really.
And there's not even really a hell of a lot you can do about it, right? Like, it's out of your power.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, there's nothing really you can do. It's the government and the farmers that need to get a grip on that. And it's really tough to do anything about it. I mean, yeah, there's no solution, I think, for you. If you have a house in the north in those months, I would definitely vacate.
Man, that's too bad. Kevin's second question was, what did you do for sewage?
For the sewage, we have a pretty normal system, which is a system that's made out of 3 tanks. And depending on what sewage water, so the toilet water, goes in one bin and then goes into another. And I think we were advised every 5 or 6 years, something like that, we have to call the sewage truck, and they're going to sort of connect a hose on these tanks that are in the ground and suck up all that stuff.
Okay, all right.
There's also other options we looked at that you don't have to do that. It's quite interesting. So there's a tank system with different natural materials where it sort of degrades on its own, and it just takes a longer time. But in the end, I looked into it, and it was quite pricey to do that. And so we decided to go just with a normal system, which is fine for us because also we don't use the house as much as you would use your daily apartment. So I think the sewage is not that much.
Right. Like a standard septic system.
Yes, a standard septic system. Mm-hmm.
All right. And final question from Eric. He says, besides control over the design, is there a cost advantage to building versus buying?
Yeah, that's quite an interesting question. I think at the end, of course, it's always nice to own your own house. And if you buy it or build it, at the end, it might not make a huge difference. I think it really comes down to what you sort of want to do with your house, right? I mean, if you look for a house somewhere in Chiang Mai and you look around and you find a great place that you can renovate and make it your own, then I think that's great. If you do have the dream, like I had, to build your own sort of design and put up with that, then I think that's another version to do it, right? I think at the end, I'm sure it's much cheaper to build, but then it's also more hassle. So, for example, I heard that most of the houses you build sort of gain 20 to 30% of value once they're done. So basically, if you spend 5 million baht on a house, it's probably, after you're done, it's around worth 6 or 7 million, something like that. Because no one wants to put up with the hassle of building. Often it takes long. There's a lot of mistakes you have to fix, this kind of things. If you have the energy and the passion to do it, I think definitely go for building a house. But if you want to skip all these things and maybe want to renovate an older house or something like that, then that's probably also a good option.
Right, yeah. Good answer. All right, Flo, well, thanks for coming on, man. Patrons, there you go. If you want to be able to send in questions to our guests and get them to answer your questions on the show, well, you got to become a patron. Details on our website. Flo, thanks a lot, man. We really appreciate it, and we are looking forward to having our next podcast meetup at your house in Mae Hong Son, although I'm guessing it's not going to be very heavily attended, unlike the last time.
That would be great. Yeah, I'm looking forward for that. Thanks, Greg.
Man, I really enjoyed meeting Flo and having that conversation. He's a super interesting guy. I mean, his whole job, which we didn't really talk about, is fascinating. But he basically fulfilled one of the dreams of many expats.
Yeah, that's right. We've got a couple of listeners who I've talked to online, and a couple of patrons as well, who are really interested in this, because this is something that they're sort of working towards or thinking about working towards in their future.
Yeah, no, it's for expats, the idea of like kind of designing and building your own house, whether it's in the mountains and jungle or whether it's near the beach. I don't know. A lot of expats talk about this. I mean, having a condo in the city is very convenient, but a lot of us dream of having at least a weekend or vacation getaway place.
Right. Yeah, it must be really nice to be able to do that. But like you were saying, that you were surprised there's not a train station nearby, so you have to fly in there. But of course, right now, there's not a lot of flights going around Thailand.
That's right. I was going to bring up that we did this interview a while back, but coincidentally, I had arranged with Flo possibly going up there and staying there for about 5 days next week. But it turns out that it's quite difficult if you're not willing to drive from Bangkok to Mae Hong Son. You can't get there by plane easily, and I found out that there's no train station, which I didn't know after 20 years and 3 years of being the co-host of the Bangkok podcast. I didn't know that Mae Hong Son didn't have a train station.
I guess you could take a train to Chiang Mai and then get a car from Chiang Mai to Mae Hong Son. But I mean,
right? That's a lot of work. 4 hours. Mae Hong Son is not close to Chiang Mai. I mean, Mae Hong Son it's 4 or 5 hour drive from Chiang Mai. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, well, you got to go through that 1,000-turn road. It's a beautiful drive, but it's a lot of
a
lot of work to go and stay in a house for a couple of days, as nice as it is.
Well, there's a million things we could say about this house, but the thing that they decided to do is quite special. I mean, and that could be bad for some people, but great for other people. The bottom line is, it's out in the jungle. It doesn't have water. It doesn't have power on the grid. There's no train station, so it's not an easy place to get to.
Right, but that's what Flo wanted. That's what a lot of people want. Right.
But I think that's right. I mean, I think travelers who are more environmentally conscious, because as we mentioned on the show, they're planning an Airbnb-ing it. So any of our listeners out there, if you're interested in staying in Flo's house, you might actually be able to do that. But it's pretty secluded. Like that's just the way you got to if you want to take a holiday alone,
right?
Or in solitude, then in a beautiful setting, then that might be the place to do it.
Yeah, it might be nice for me and my wife to go up there, a nice little romantic weekend, get cozy, and then my kid runs in the room and jumps on my head and ruins it all. So. Anyway, thanks, Flo, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Always a pleasure to sit down with you. And we hope that listeners got a lot out of it, too, because it is something that a lot of people are interested in. And as Flo shows, it can be done.
For sure. It's a dream come true.
Yeah. All right. Here we go with Love, Loathe, or Live With, where one of us picks a particular aspect of life in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as just something that we have to learn to live with, no matter how we feel about it. And this week, it is your turn.
All right, Greg, I know this has probably happened to you 1,000 times. It might have been weird the first few times, but you probably got used to it. But I'm just curious what you think about this.
Right.
It's a small thing, but I do think it's real. I don't think this is the Farang imagination. So you go to a retail establishment, 7-Eleven would be a good example. You buy some stuff, you give them cash, they give you change.
Yeah.
But along with change, they have to give you a receipt, correct?
Yeah, I'm with you.
And what they do is they basically put the receipt in the change. It's like they bury the receipt in the change. And it seems like a small thing, but just when I think of growing up, I feel like back home they hand you the receipt and they don't like bury it in the change. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't need a receipt 7-Eleven when I buy a paperclip. Like
right. I mean, that's another twist. That's another angle.
It's
right?
like that the legendary comedian Mitch Hedberg, R.I.P., who said, "When I go to buy a donut, I do not need a receipt for the donut. Who am I going to show it to? Some skeptical friend? Like, I don't believe you bought a donut. I got the receipt right here." So I think it's ridiculous. They always give you a receipt anyway for no matter how minor the purchase. But yeah, they stick it under the change in your money, and then you're like, for me, I'm usually holding the thing I bought in one hand, the change in the other hand, and I'm like, I want to take that receipt out, but I got no hands left.
That's right. Okay. So I'm glad you're at least on the same page. So, it's hard to, it seems like a small thing, but it's actually a thing that Thai people do repeatedly. And it's like, so usually the receipt might be under your bills above the change. It's like sandwiched in there. And so you're right. I always end up having money in my pockets with various receipts buried inside the cash.
Yeah, I would have to say live with on this. I would like to say loathe, but it's just something obviously that I have to live with because I have to take it because I
Right,
don't have a free
right.
I don't have a third hand to pull it out. So
Yeah. This is one of those things. I would not call it super. It's definitely not super annoying. So I'm gonna have to go live with. But it is an odd, somewhat annoying thing.
yeah, I wish it didn't happen, but we're stuck with it apparently.
All right. So, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Robert Chenier. Now, of course, I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name. So, Robert, if your name is pronounced Chenier, I apologize. I'm going to run with Chenier for now. But thank you to Robert for lending us his support at the show shadow level. Greg, what did you find out about Robert?
Maybe Robert is French, huh? Chenier?
Could Chenier?
Chenier? Or maybe he's American and it's Chenier. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be Chenier.
Chenier.
It might
Robert,
be Chenier.
Robert,
if he's
let us
American.
know. Well, it turns out that Robert, our friend Robert, is a bit of a food hound, which is similar to you and I.
Okay.
Yeah, from what he tells me, he likes to eat things that fall into the more interesting categories of what is edible. And he said he's been to Thailand many times. Can't wait to come back once COVID dies down. And he says all of his favorite moments have involved food. But he wasn't always this way, though, because he told me a funny story about how the first time he was in Paragon, he was in the Paragon food court, and he saw a river prawn, and he didn't know what the hell it was. He was like, what is this thing?
A giant shrimp, basically.
But, you know, I kind of get it, though, because the first time I saw one, like, they cut it down its body lengthwise and then split it open.
Right. Right. It is weird. It looks weird.
Yeah, it's a creepy looking thing. But thankfully, that was his exposure to eating strange things, and since then, he's gone on to eat tiny birds, crickets, silkworms, and little crabs. And then he said, but the spiciest was in Ubon Ratchathani. My girlfriend ordered plara, which is disgusting on its own. That's a whole nother story. Don't get me started. But
Right.
if you like it, Robert, it's more power to you, buddy. But he said his girlfriend ordered plara, my pet, and he capitalized my pet. So it was a definitive my pet from a vendor. And he said, I can eat spicy, but her my pet could strip the paint off metal. Even my girlfriend struggled with it.
Well, I can relate. This is, because back in the States, I'm someone who likes spicy food. But if you say in Thailand that you like spicy food, you've got something else coming.
What was the spiciest food you've ever eaten in Thailand? Do you remember?
But, it's funny you asked that because I know for sure the hottest thing I've ever had in Thailand, and it was kind of a bowl of jungle curry or gang pa. It was so freaking hot. I really struggled to eat it, but then it just lasted in my mouth and didn't go anywhere, and it just kept getting hotter and hotter.
Right.
Yeah, it was bad news.
Yeah.
And again, I like spicy food.
For me, it was some frog's legs I had in Mae Sai one time on the Burmese border, and I ate them, and it was the same thing. It was like, oh, this isn't going away. It's getting worse.
Right. That's right. Right.
You know.
Right. You realize it's going to be an ordeal.
Yeah.
Basically.
All I could think of was the acid blood in Alien that just kept going and eating through the successive decks of the ship as it kept going. I'm like, it's not stopping.
In the future, we should do a show specifically on the spiciest food we can find. That'd be a fun show for our listeners to listen to us suffer.
Yeah, the hell with that. I'm not doing it. That's not going to be a fun show for me. Like listening to me cry for 30 minutes is not my idea of a fun show. But anyway, Robert, we can identify with that, man. Strip the paint off metal. Yeah, those frog's legs got me, and I think to this day I still have a little sort of PTSD from that. So I hear where you're coming from. But I'll tell you what, man. When you're in town, when COVID ends and you come back, let's go out for some good food. We're gonna make sure to order everything my pet. Just farang spicy is fine with me.
That's right.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Robert. Okay, a final thanks to our patrons who help keep the show ad-free. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
True that. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can chat with us on the Line Chat app, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter if you want, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Take it easy, take care, and we will see you next week.
Absolutely. For sure, it was this gang pa, or is it gang pa? Wait, dude. So fix this, Greg, and when you edit, what's the word for jungle? Pa. It's called jungle curry.
Let me look.
Gang pa. I think it's gang pa.
Let me just.
Gang pa. Is it pa or pa?
Let me just do a quick check. Jungle is ba. Ba.
Ba. Gang ba. Okay. I don't care about the tone. I've given up on those.